Hi guys! In this video, I'm going to talk about why stretching sometimes works really well to help injuries and other times that it can make it so much worse. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Maryke. I'm one of the physiotherapists from sportsinjuryphysio.com, where you can get online physiotherapy assessment as well as treatment for your injuries. Have a look at the description of this video if you want a link to our website. Okay, so what's the deal with stretching? Why does it sometimes help and other times it can make it so much worse? So the times that it works really well is usually when muscle spasm or increased muscle tone is the main cause for your pain and discomfort. And let me explain why. So if we think of our muscles, they always have a little bit of muscle tone in them, even when you're sleeping. So it's only when you're dead that there's no muscle tone in it. And that muscle tone is a function of the nerves that just keeps the muscle fibers slightly contracted. But it's very tiny, it's a very little bit, and you want it there to an extent. Now, we talk about increased muscle tone in physio terms and injury terms when the muscle, that slight contracted state that it's in, is a lot more than what it usually is. So now it's becoming semi-contracted all the time. I don't want to say spasm, because spasm is, or cramp is when it really gets hold of you and it's that cramp feeling, you've got to get it going. So increased muscle tone is a lot more subtle than that. That's the muscle that you just feel, oh man, it's tight and it doesn't want to let go. That's typically increased muscle tone that causes that. Now there's a few things that can be the cause of that. It can be that you did a lot of exercise. So now the muscle is a little bit in more tone than usual, because it's the nerve endings and how activated the nervous system is to that muscle that determines how tight it is. It can also be that you held a muscle in a certain position for a very long time, and then it just went, yeah, now I'm knackered, now I'm just going to go boom and tighten up. So that's typically for neck pain and stuff. If you hold a position or you hold something in your arms for a long time, or you sit, for instance, you don't realize when you're concentrating, you keep on pulling your shoulders up. So this is constantly tense. And then you're surprised that it's sore later on because now it's not relaxing. So those are typical things for increased muscle tone. If we think of injuries can cause increased muscle tone, and I'll talk about that in a bit, because if there's an injury to an area, like for instance, you've torn a muscle or you've sprained a joint, any type of injury, if you've got pain in an area, you will also have increased muscle tone. But now it's important to distinguish between the two. So if it's plain old exercise, or that you've overused a muscle a little bit, or you've tensed it too much, and it's the increased muscle tone that's the main issue, stretching will work well. But if there's an underlying injury that's either inflamed, or something is torn, or something is irritated, then stretching will likely make it feel worse. So it's useful to see somebody who can help you distinguish between the two and help you understand why stretching sometimes works and doesn't. Now, whenever you stretch a muscle and you hold the stretch for longer than 8 seconds, you start to decrease the nerve activity in that muscle, and you can get the fibers to relax. And that's why if you hold a contraction for longer than 8 seconds, it starts to calm down, and longer than 30 seconds, you can really get the muscle activity to go down. So if you have a cramp, for instance, that works brilliantly. I don't know how many of you have woken up in the middle of the night with your calf cramping and then you've got to jump out of bed and try to put your weight on it. And that's why if you stretch something that's in cramp, it just relaxes it. And that's why sometimes if you've had a hard day's work in front of the computer and you feel tight and stiff, and you do some yoga and you stretch and stuff, you feel so much better, because it's just that increased muscle tone that was part of the issue of why you were feeling so uncomfortable. But now let's move on to when stretching does not really help and can make it feel worse. I think here it's important to understand that there are two reasons why you can feel stiff or tight. There's the sensation of stiffness or tightness that you feel, which isn't true tightness or stiffness that you can stretch away. And then there's the true tightness where it's increased muscle tone. Now, whenever you have an injury, like for instance, you've sprained a joint or you've pulled a muscle, it may feel tight and as if you want to stretch it to get it to release. But it's not true tightness. As that injury heals and the healing process happens, that sensation of tightness will disappear by itself. You do not have to stretch it to get that. Now, if we think of muscle strains, for instance, you've torn your quad muscle or you've pulled a hamstring muscle, the whole mechanism of injury there is a stretch injury, that you've stretched it suddenly and some of the fibers have torn. So can you see, if you're going to go do stretches for your tight calf after you've strained it, that it's likely going to make the injury worse because you're now stretching something that's already overstretched. Then, if we think of tissue that is super sensitive, like for instance, when you've got Achilles tendinopathy or a tendinitis type thing in one of your tendons, a tendon that's irritated, if you stretch it, especially prolonged stretching, it can feel brilliant in the moment, but then later on, it gets really angry with it because the tissue is just too sensitive. And yes, it feels really tight and it makes your calf feel tight and it all feels uncomfortable, so you feel you want to stretch it. But it's not the way to get it better because it will just make it feel worse. You have to get the correct exercises and advice for that the injury and the reason why it's injured can start to decrease. And as that heals, the tightness in the calf and everything will disappear by itself because that was the driver for the tightness. Then if we think of things like a bursitis or where there's specifically inflammation involved and it's the inflammation in that bursa that's causing the trouble, and a bursitis is usually caused by something that's overstretched. So if we think of the Achilles again, where it comes close to the heel, it's usually when that area is overstretched and it squashes the bursa that it becomes inflamed and sore and swells up. So if you're now going to do calf stretches because it feels tight in that area, you're going to squash it further and make that feel worse. Let me think, where else is there a good example? The hips. So in the hips, you get a condition called greater trochanteric pain syndrome, which I can never say, which is a fancy name for, it can either be a bursitis over the side of the hip, or there can be a bursitis plus some gluteal tendinopathy, so the tendons again is affected. Now, it can make your glutes and your bum feel really, really tight. And when physios test you, they'll go, your ITB is tight, we've got to stretch it all. If you stretch it, you squash everything over the hip bone more. Guess what happens? You squash it even more, creates more inflammation, creates more irritation in the tendons, and everything becomes more tight. So I guess my takeaway here is that, yeah, for some things stretching can work, but it's only if muscle spasm and increased muscle tone are the sole drivers of that injury. If there's anything that's inflamed or torn or properly injured, then usually stretching is not the best option for treatment. And it's usually going to be a combination of offloading, so load management, plus specific exercises to strengthen that injured bit up again. That will be your best bet. And then as it recovers, the tightness will disappear by itself. Let me know if you've got any questions. And if you need more help with an injury, you're welcome to consult one of us via video call. The link to our website is in the description of this video. Take care.